Connected Homeschooling, Episode 13.
Welcome to the Connected Homeschooling Podcast, where we connect homeschooling families like yours with leaders, authors, speakers, and all-around interesting people who provide great conversations, tips, and advice. Now here's your host, Devin Dabney.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Connected Homeschooling Podcast. I am your host, Devin Dabney, and I'm glad to be back for another episode. This week, I have something that's a bit different. I had planned to have an interview as I usually do on the show, but it didn't work out, and so actually I wanted to share information about myself. Many of you have been listening for several weeks or even months, and you had a chance to listen to several of the interviews and the guests that I brought onto the show. But you may not have an idea about me and my homeschooling journey, and so I'd like to share this week and just give you some information about my family and what we're doing in the homeschooling community. But first, I'd like to get started with a connecting scripture, and it comes from 2 Corinthians chapter 12 and verse 9. It says, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." And definitely one of the lessons that we've learned as homeschoolers and a homeschooling family is that many times without God's grace, we really wouldn't be able to do what we're doing. It's not an easy thing that we're doing, and regardless of whether you have one child or many children, it can be a challenge sometimes. And so we definitely have to lean on God's grace. But we also see that in our weakness, God's power is definitely displayed. And so this scripture from 2 Corinthians 12:9 is something that we stand on, and it's something that is a reminder to us in those moments of weakness that God's grace is sufficient for us, and also that his power is made perfect in those times. So I just wanted to share that to get us started. And we'll just jump into my homeschooling journey. When my wife and I got married about 9 years ago, we had just come out of college and were fresh in our education. And both of us had a passion for learning and just always being lifelong learners. And so we knew that when we'd have children that we would work with them on whatever it was, whether it was their schoolwork or teaching them about our beliefs. We knew that that would be a part of our lives. So when we had our first child, my wife actually had just graduated at 7 months pregnant. Shortly after we had our first child, it wasn't really an option for her to go to work at that time, and so she was at home with our child, and she started to work with her over time as she got a little bit older and just teach her things like her alphabet and colors and numbers, and just working with her as our child and someone we wanted to share education with. And over time, we were introduced to this concept of homeschooling. We met people who were homeschooling, and the question was posed, were we going to homeschool our child? And we really didn't have much thought about that because it wasn't something that was familiar to us or something that anyone in our family did. So we did some research on it and decided, hey, this may be something that we can do. And for sure, our child wouldn't be able to go to school until she was at least 5 or possibly even 6, going into kindergarten. And by the time she even got to that age, she had already learned many of the lessons that she would have learned in kindergarten with my wife working with her. So we just kept going from there, from the beginning, and have not stopped since. There's been definitely some benefits, and we've even seen our second child pick up from the first, and the third pick up from the first two. And so it just continues on the cycle of education, and it's something that really works for us. As far as our curriculum choices, we've used Abeka, we've used Saxon, we've used some online programs. One of them that we use is Time for Learning, and then there's another program that we use from time to time. And you really have to screen these programs just to make sure the content is appropriate for your family. There may be certain areas that you want to use, but some other areas maybe not. I believe the other one that we use is called Moby Math or Moby Max, one of those, but I'll link up to it in the show notes for today's episode. And so we've just tried different things. We've reviewed different curricula before, and you just get exposed to a lot of different options. So as far as some of the challenges that we faced, I would say, of course, we've had some opposition from family members or people that may not understand what homeschooling is all about. We've also had the challenges of initially just trying to mimic the school system, because when you've been in the public school system your whole life, then that's kind of what you know. And if you're homeschooling your kids, you tend to think, all right, well, we'll just get some desks and they'll sit down and we'll have the whiteboards or the chalkboards, and we'll just do things the way it's done in the public school system. But we realize that we're not trying to imitate that or necessarily have the same results even. Our main goal is to produce lifelong learners and just have students who are passionate about education regardless of what the topic is, and that they would be able to just formulate some good information and be able to learn about a topic and be able to apply it really to life. It's not about just regurgitating something that they read or something that they come across or learn once and then they just memorize it for a test. It's really about them learning things that can benefit them in their lives. So those are some of the challenges we've had. And also with us having such little ones and so many little ones, it's been a challenge at times just keeping our little boys especially active. But as we've embraced some of the online time, we've been able to give our older children, the girls, some time where they can work by themselves at the computer, and that's helped to free up time to work with the boys. What we do as far as balancing the time definitely has been embracing some of the online. I know some people are opposed to a lot of technology, but I think it has its place in homeschooling. And the more you embrace it and learn about it and just figure out some of the things, it can benefit your family quite well. One of the big questions in homeschooling is, what about socialization? And I think over the weeks of doing this podcast, I've even reaffirmed my own beliefs about socialization and just what we really desire for our socialization. I want my children to be able to have a conversation with anyone. I want them to be able to speak well. I want them to be able to know what they believe and be able to articulate that regardless of what venue they're in. And I think we're on the way to that. I believe that many times socialization has to do with your environment. And many times who you're around the most will affect the socialization. So if you're around your peers and people your age, that's kind of going to limit some of what you think or believe. And if your parents are able to shape some of that, then that really will affect your social skills. So if your parents are very social and outgoing and able to articulate well, more than likely that's going to be the case for you, and I believe that's the case for our children. So it's not really something that concerns me as well. I always ask my guests about their participation in co-ops or extracurricular activities, and that's something that we've been involved in. We've been in several different co-ops, and it's been an overall pleasant experience. So I think that's something that we'll continue, especially while they're young. We'll just reevaluate each year as we do with some other things. Now, I want to transition to some of the other things that I'm involved in. And really, as you guys know, as listeners to this podcast, in terms of homeschooling, connectedhomeschooling.com is really my place on the web where I share about homeschooling. And it just brings me pleasure each week to bring on a different guest and just talk to them about their journey. And every week, without fail, as I've talked to guests, whether I've known them before or just met them before the interviews, I've learned something different, whether it was a different curriculum option or website or resource, or even something about about the guest. Even last week, I had on Dorinda Wilson. I found out that she had gone to nanny school. I mean, that was something that you probably wouldn't find out anywhere unless you spent a long time just getting to know her. And so when I learn about some of these things, it's uh, really cool to me. And I'm just learning all these things as a part of my continuing education as a homeschooling dad and someone involved in the homeschooling community. I want to share about some of my non-homeschooling ventures. Many of you may know or may not know that I'm a technology consultant, and part of what I do is websites and social media marketing, and just some of those things that many times people struggle with, especially if they're not so tech savvy. And I do it with the heart of an educator. I often hear Dave Ramsey talk about finding people in business who have the heart of a teacher. And I come from a long line of teachers from both sides of my family, and just people who are passionate about teaching and education. And it carries over into my business. So as I'm walking clients through problems that they have with a computer or walking through a website project that we're working on, it's really something that I enjoy teaching people about. And often in my day job, I'm called on to do workshops or do training, and it's something that I enjoy. So I write from my blog at devindabney.com, just sharing some of the things that are on my heart. Sometimes I share a useful resource or some information about what I'm learning, and I just do those things at my blog there, and I write about a number of different topics. And then I also, as an extension of what I'm doing, my wife writes at her blog, curlymom.com, where she writes about parenting and um, being a wife. Some great topics there, and it's just an interesting site to check out and subscribe to. And we're both involved with blogging, and we're involved with just connecting with people online and offline, whether in the homeschooling community or not. Just people that are useful and helpful, and just people that we can edify and people that edify us. So you can check out some of those things at our websites, and also just feel free to connect with us on social media because we enjoy learning from people and connecting with interesting and cool people. So enough about my business topics. Other than um, I'll just say that I am the author of two books now, and if you go to Amazon.com, you can just put in Devin Dabney, and you can find my author page. And one of them I wrote. The first one is about creating a technology plan. So if you don't have a technology plan for your home, you don't know how to necessarily set up some guidelines and goals and different things for your technology, you might want to check out that book. And the Kindle version is actually $3.99, so it's really cheap and something that can possibly eliminate some problems that you can experience with technology in your home. And then my other book, the most recent one, is 20 Ways to Earn an Extra $1,000 for the Holidays. So that's been one that's popular as people are trying to just bring in some extra money during the holiday season. It's very straightforward, a quick read, and something that can just ignite a passion for you to get out and earn some extra cash for the holidays. So just check those out, and I love any feedback on them. Just let me know what you think about the books if you had a chance to read them, and feel free to leave some reviews. The next thing that we'll do is just go into 7 with Devin. I do this segment with our guest, and I'll just go through some of the questions really quickly here, and then we'll wrap up the interview. A top free resource that I recommend is actually a program called Evernote. And as I'm doing this recording, I'm actually looking at my Evernote account to see the questions that I generally ask of my guests. And Evernote is something that allows us to pretty much have a digital brain. I mean, you can store all kinds of documents. You can share processes and um, text files, audio files, pictures, whatever it is you want to store. You can create templates there, just different documents that um, make life so much easier. You can store instructions on how you do things. You can store recipes there. If in terms of homeschooling, you can store information on what your child has done throughout the course of the year. Maybe snap in some copies of drawings that they've done or worksheets that they've done. You can scan them to a PDF and store them there. There's so many different options for Evernote, and I'm actually considering writing a short book or resource about how homeschoolers can use Evernote because I believe it's such a powerful resource. So stay tuned for that. The top paid resource that I recommend to listeners is, I'd probably say, Time for Learning, just because I haven't been exposed to as many paid resources, and we try to find whatever is free or inexpensive. But this is something that we invest in each month, and it's proved quite well for us to be a resource to allow our kids to do some online learning, and it helps with us balancing the schedules. There's so many different uses for Time for Learning, and they actually allow you to have access to 3 different grade levels. So um, if you think your child's in second grade, you'd also have access to first grade and third grade. So it's something that you may want to check out. If we were able to start our homeschooling journey over, our first step, I believe, would be to just relax and spend more time just not trying to mimic the public school system, not necessarily buying a bunch of different things, although it had its place in teaching the kids the alphabet and some of those things. I believe we would just relax a little bit more and just focus on reading to the children, doing some more fun activities, and also just implementing some of the digital aspects probably earlier even for us, and just tracking what was going on and capturing some of the things that our children have done. Just doing better record keeping, I guess. And so that's some of the things that we're going to do looking forward. My best advice for homeschooling dads is to just find a way to be involved. I know with many of us having day jobs and just doing different things, usually the task of homeschooling falls to the mom. But the best thing we can do as dads is to just spend some time to know what's going on, to answer questions that your wife may have, and just to attend events. If at all possible, just try to attend their co-op if they're going to one. This whether there's a special activity going on at the co-op or a field trip or something. Just your presence can mean a whole lot, and it says that you're involved. You may be the only guy there sometimes. I've had that experience, but just show up and be involved. So that's my best advice to homeschooling dads. Our greatest challenge, or my greatest challenge as a homeschooling dad, has just been the feeling that sometimes I don't know as much as I'd like to about our process and the different curriculum choices, or even what I'd like to be able to do with the children. So it's something that I'm going to spend some more time with, and just find out what's out there that I could use myself to educate the children. And the last question in this segment is about a unique talent or characteristic about me most people don't know. Well, I started off when I was about 4 years old as a gymnast, and we stacked up some of those big tractor tires on the playground. I think we stacked them up about 4 or 5 high, and I saw a bunch of my friends just stand on top, and they did a backflip off the tires onto the ground. And so at that time, with me having no fear, I jumped off backwards and did my first backflip. And I've been able to do backflips ever since. And a few years ago, some of my student workers just doubted my ability to do a backflip, and so we actually went to our rec center on my campus, and I went and proved them wrong, and they actually recorded it. So I have the recording on my website, and I'll link up to that in the show notes. So I'm soon to be 31 years old. I can still do a backflip, and I plan to do one each year. And hopefully when I'm still 40 or 45, I can still do it without breaking anything. So you have to stay tuned with that. Well, each week I try to offer a resource to our listeners. And this week I want to encourage listeners to subscribe to the podcast. There are so many different ways of doing it. I post the videos with the audio on YouTube. That's one way to do it. You can subscribe to the channel there. But you can also subscribe on iTunes, where you can get each episode there and be notified whenever there's a new episode. You can also subscribe on Stitcher.com, Stitcher Radio. That's the way I listen to podcasts, and just so convenient to make a playlist of all the podcasts that you listen to and just listen to them one behind the other. And you can also go back and listen to previous episodes. So you can do that. But also make sure you're part of the email list on connectedhomeschooling.com. On the right side, there's a little box. You can just simply enter your email address, and every time I release the show notes for a new episode, or as I'm releasing the new episode, as soon as that email goes out, it also posts the audio to iTunes and the Stitcher and those different places, and you're notified right away. So you'll get the show notes in your email, and you can click and listen to the podcast right away. So check that out, and I'd also like to hear from you. Give me some feedback. I got some valuable feedback from the last episode, and it was great. I like hearing from people who are listening. Sometimes there are people who are listening to the podcast, and I have no clue, even if it's people that I know. So just send me a quick message or leave some comments in the show notes. The show notes for this episode are connectedhomeschooling.com/episode 13. And if nothing else, just say, hey, Devin, I listened to this episode, and, pose me a question or leave a recommendation for somebody you think it would be great for me to interview. And I just love hearing from you. So sometimes I know with podcasts it can be a challenge to get engagement, and you have people that listen but may not feel comfortable commenting or doing any of that. But if you feel comfortable commenting or posing a question, by all means, please do so. I'd love to just chat back and forth. So we're going to wrap up this week, and I hope you'll tune in next week, where I definitely hope to have a guest and just share some of their journey, share what they're doing in the homeschool community. And I just want to encourage you to connect with me on Facebook. If you're an active member there, you can listen and just tune in. As I post different things, I'm actually going to be posting some more videos related to the different episodes that we've released, just as an intro to some of those things. And also, I'm active on Twitter, Google+, and some of you may be on LinkedIn. Just connect with me, and I'd love to see you online. So until next week, take care, and God bless.